Now it is my honor to introduce the moderator for the panel discussion today, Dr. Cherie Kwan-See. Dr. Kwan-See is a professor of psychology at the University of Alberta. She serves on the board of the Edmonton Seniors Coordinating Council and is a change maker on Edmonton's friendly Ageism Hub. Dr. Kwan-See conducts research on the development and impact of age stereotyping and ageism in real-world contexts. He teaches lifespan developmental psychology and adult developmental and aging. Please welcome Dr. Kwan-See. Cherie.
Good afternoon, everyone, and it is a pleasure to be back with you for a second panel on ageism, upsides and downsides. Now, ageism is not a new term, but one that we are starting to pay more attention to. The term itself was coined by geriatrician Robert Butler to refer in the 1960s, so it's not a new term. And he coined that term to refer to a form of bigotry that he paralleled in importance to racism. Ageism involves stereotyping about the aging process and older people as a group. So stereotypes are what underlie when we say things like, oh, that happens in aging, don't you know? Or, oh, that's just what older people are like. Now, when those stereotypical beliefs lead to prejudice and discrimination of people based on their age, that's ageism. Now, ageism happens across the lifetime. So we can be ageist against younger people, teenagers, for example. But arguably, the impacts of ageism are most serious in later life. So there's quite a body of research now that shows that when older people are treated according to stereotypes as opposed to their own individuality, that there can be impacts on health and well-being. Likewise, research shows that when older people internalize age stereotypes, there can be an impact on health and well-being. So increasingly, we are recognizing then that ageism matters. So much so that the theme for the International Day of the Older Person by the World Health Organization in 2016 was to take a stand against ageism. So as individuals, how do we take a stand against ageism? Well, one way would be to, as individuals, start increasing our awareness of ageism and people's experiences of it. So what it is and how we experience it. And another way that we can take a stand against ageism is to counter the stereotypes by having conversations about aging and the aging process, realistic, balanced conversations as opposed to stereotypical conversations. So realistic and balanced conversations about aging and growing older. So that is what panels like this are about and what this panel is about today. So I am delighted to have our distinguished panelists with us today. So we have on my screen, Karen Vander Wever, Edmonton artist extraordinaire. So Karen is with us to talk to us about her experiences of ageism and growing older. We have a community leader and well-known politician, Stephen Mandel. So as a leader, he has occupied many hats, but perhaps best well known for his role as our former mayor of Edmonton. And we have Dr. Adrienne Wagg with us here today, a professor of medicine at the University of Alberta, has had many leadership roles at the university, and is a specialist in geriatric medicine. And I would say his area of expertise has to do with age-related changes with things going on below the belt. So you may have a little chat that you might want to send a private chat there to Adrienne about if you're experiencing issues below the belt. But that's not our topic today. Our topic today is ageism. And let's begin our conversation about ageism, upsides and downsides, with our panelists. So let me begin with our first question that I will direct to one of our panelists, and then each will address it in turn. So the first question, growing older involves many changes. And now thinking about your experience growing older, what would you say are two changes that have been most notable to you? Okay, let's begin with Adrienne.
Well, thanks, Cherie. I think the first thing I'd say is that I'm not old. And I suspect that many people, including our panelists, don't feel old. We know that, and as you will know well, that when we're young, we like to be about 5 years older so we can do stuff that our older compatriots can do. And as we age, we tend to knock off years. And we not only knock off years in terms of our own self-image, but physiologically, the way our bodies are generally is about 10 years younger than they were 20 to 40 years ago. So I haven't experienced aging yet. I'm 57. I don't consider myself old. And I'm sure there are people here. In fact, I've just seen a 92-year-old that says, actually, when I get to be 94, maybe things will start going wrong and I will feel a bit older. But what we do experience is maybe changes in our body. We know that we might get a middle-age spread. And until very recently, we assumed that that was because our metabolism slowed down. We know now that's a load of tosh. And in fact, we need to pay more attention to our nutrition and the amount of calories we take in and our exercise. Quite simple. We know that slightly plump people live longer, so there's a healthy balance there. But I became quite fat about 4 years ago and purposefully lost about 65 pounds. So that's been the one thing that I've noticed with aging. It takes a lot more intent to remain fit and healthy in terms of exercise and nutrition. I guess the main thing that I have noticed, and Dr. Mundell will know exactly the same thing, is that you get mocked because you have male pattern baldness as you get older. And that's probably the most significant thing that my son certainly takes the mickey out of me about aging. Attitude, people take you seriously. Your children don't believe you know anything until suddenly you know lots of stuff about everything. And your opinions appear to hold some weight and matter. So wisdom, experience, education mixed together of great value. Karen.
Thanks, Adrian. When I was a kid, I have memories of bringing a chair into the bathroom and standing on it. So I'd get the perspective of what things would look like when I was older. And I remembered this a little while ago when I found myself in the bathroom, crouching down, trying to recall what it looked like from the perspective of when I was a child. When I was young, I kept waiting for this period of wisdom. So I thought when you became an adult, you would have all the answers, you would arrive. All the pieces of the puzzle would be put together neatly. I thought this would happen at 20 initially, and then 30, and then probably 40, and for sure 50. Well, I'm 60 now, and I haven't arrived. And for me, it's stunning. I am never going to arrive. I'm still a kid inside. So I suspect 90-year-olds are kids inside. I'm cloaked in a body that's aging, but I am still a kid. And so I'm thinking, so that was a shock for me, is that we're all young, we're all the same age, but just some of us are I have more experiences under my belt, and I have a few more wrinkles to show that I've been around longer. Life has some very difficult moments and some profound losses that I think has helped me to be more empathetic, at least on my good days. I'm learning to let go. So when my children grew up and moved away, I had to learn to let go of that part of my life. I'm learning to let go of the need to look young, and I'm starting to care less about what people think or don't think of me. I absolutely love living. There's so many incredibly beautiful things mixed in with the difficult times. There's so much to learn. I expect that for me, the whole point might be learning to let go. Eventually, I'm going to have to learn to let go of living, which hopefully won't happen soon. But I remember my dad when telling me when I was younger that when he hit his mid-50s, he lost his fear of death. And I remember thinking, well, that's not going to happen to me because I'm terrified of dying. Well, here I am 60, and I don't want it to happen anytime soon. But I have indeed lost a lot of that fear. Aging to me isn't things ending. It doesn't have to be the end of things. It's change. It's a new time for new beginnings. So when I'm still working full time as well as painting in the evenings and weekends, and when I retire, I will have time to focus on painting. I'll have time to learn my fiddle finally, properly. I will have time to finish learning French and then move on to another language and then another language and knitting. And there's just so much to learn. It's a whole new world of opportunities based on prior opportunities and experiences that I've been lucky enough to have. Stephen, over to you.
Well, both of you said so many wonderful things. I guess, Adrian, my hair is not going to grow back because that's what you're saying. I'm a bit disappointed in that. I'd hoped that as I got older, it would come back because I lost it when I was younger. All of us, as we get older, we don't think we're getting older. I look in the mirror and I see this young guy without hair, but a guy that's still got plenty of life, plenty of vigor, wants to do lots of things, and that my age shouldn't restrict me from doing anything, that I have the capacity whatever I want to do. But in actual fact, I can't hit the baseball as far as I used to. I can't hit the golf ball as far as I used to. But I have to enjoy and live within the context of who I am today. And that's what's really important. It's who I am today, and whatever that capacity is. And I feel comfortable that I sometimes feel I'm 40, and sometimes I feel I'm a little older. But really, life is such a precious thing. But one thing I'm noticing lately, it goes by so quick. And one of the things I've noticed most is that I turn around and years go by. And one of the great measurers is the love of my life, my grandson, who turned 9 yesterday. And I can't believe that was 9 years ago he was born. And he's like a measurement. But he has changed my life so much, because the kind of things that I could do with him, I couldn't do with my children. And so the joy of getting older, but having the capacity to enjoy your family is so vitally important. And I think having them around you and watching them grow, watching them succeed, watching them face challenges and hope you can help them. I mean, life is a very, very non-ending event, and then it ends. But until that point, we need to grow. We need to feel confident. We need to enjoy ourselves and feel part of this vigorous life that once had 30, 40, 50 years ago. We're no different. We're just a bit older. And in my years in politics, as well as an individual, I've seen so many people who are so vibrant, who are so giving, and who do so much for the community when they're older. And I don't like to use the word older, when their capacity is still as great, but they're sometimes not being included in other things, that I think that we should really reach out more to our aging citizens and allow them to become have the input into society that they really should have, because we've lost some of that experience in life, and we need to get that back, because they're such a valuable group. So my belief is that we have to maintain that we have tremendous capacity and enjoy our growing older with the family that we have. And I'm going to turn it back to you, Sherry.
What brilliant answers. I'm wishing I had a recording of this to be able to show to some of my classes. I teach courses on aging. And this question, what 2 changes have been most notable to you? And I think when we're younger, we're assuming, as Karen was saying, things are going to be so different, that aging has some stark change associated with it. But what all of you have said, I don't feel old. I'm still the same inside. My body outside is aging. One of the things that I think young people have to realize is this aging is a process. And it's happening gradually, and it surprises us as it's happening. And these changes, we don't actually notice them nearly as much. I mean, some things we do, physical kinds of things we do notice, but the process that's happening is gradual. So one of the things I always try to impress upon students, it's not like one day you're young and the next day you're old. And you've all said that, and that the person inside doesn't seem to be aging, but there are changes that are happening kind of outside. So what I heard from you was, that exactly that things are gradual, that there is a process here that's going on. I'm hearing that you're saying that the person inside doesn't age, and that when we think of changes, so often we think only of the physical side of aging. And there are some things there that change, that Adrian was pointing out, that maybe are not so positive, but there's a great deal of control over that. Plasticity, so losing weight if you want to lose weight, improving some ability if you want to improve that ability. And then I think what I was picking up from Stephen was, when we think of changes though, they're not all physical. So there are some things that happen in our social life, like the emergence of grandchildren is one of those upsides. So yeah, some downsides, but clearly some upsides as well. So thank you for the wonderful answers to that question. Gave us a lot to think about. Lots of themes came out of that. So let's move on then to our second question. So reflecting on your experience, can you think of maybe 2 people, more if you'd like, 2 people who have been most influential in shaping your experience of growing older? And when you talk about those people, in what ways did they shape or impact your experience? Karen, why don't you kick it off for us?
Thanks, Cherie. My grandmother inspired me. She was such a fabulous person, so loving, kind, wise, gentle. She was very independent and very hardworking woman. She taught me so much. She taught me not to judge people. She taught me to make sure that I owned my things and my things didn't own me, and how easy it was to forget that. And after Grandpa died, neither of them lived very long. They both died of cancer, but she had quite a few years after Grandpa. She stayed on the farm by herself, taking care of this huge garden, this enormous yard. She couldn't drive. It wasn't until later in life that I did some research and found out, it was long after she'd passed away, that I found out that she'd been in residential school. This was something I'd never heard discussed. I'd heard whispers of some religious school Grandma was in, but I'd never heard that. So she arrived at age 6, speaking only Cree. She wanted to continue her education in Edmonton when they sent her out at 16, and the letter from the Indian agent was brutal and basically said, no, Indian women did not need education. My inspiration from her grew. After learning that, I wish I could talk to her now. I wish I could ask her things that I didn't know to ask when I was younger. I think of her strength in going through that, losing her beloved mother at a very young age, and then being sent away to St. Albert, away from her family and friends, losing her language, losing her culture. As an adult, she had lost 2 children while alone and running the farm. 9 kids, I believe, and caring for her young family in the hard times of the 30s while her husband was away in Europe fighting in the war. She didn't know if he was alive or dead. There was no email, texting, phone calls. She was a remarkably strong and resilient woman. I've had so many inspirational older people that I've come across and met in my life. I'm going to go close to home for my mom and her siblings. They are all really healthy, living a long time. Her sister, for example, 84 this summer, took up paddle boarding. So my mom was the same. She was really physically active. She was a health nut. I remember distinctly when we were young and all the junk food was off the table, and it was like, what? Why us? So she did everything right. But my mother is the only one in her family who developed dementia. And she's 85 now. For the past 3 years, she's been in a locked-in unit. And it's a terrible disease on the family. It's quite horrific, and I'm her power of attorney. So there's a lot of extra challenges involved. But at the same time, she's happy. When I go to visit her, I haul in my guitar, I sing, she gets up and dances. She might not know specifically who I am, but she knows I'm someone important. She knows the words to every song. I think she was a huge loner, and I am too. So in case that's the key, I've decided that when I'm very physically active as well, but that when I retire from my job, I'm going to work at keeping engaged with other people. I also think that aging is a bit of a crapshoot. I don't like the tendency where we blame the ill sometimes. So I think it's a lot of genetics and luck, and some of us are going to get ill earlier. Some of us are never going to get ill. And there's disadvantages to any illness that hits us, but it doesn't have to be the end of the world. And if I get dementia, it's going to be bad for my family, but I'm probably going to be happy and singing along. That's it. And I'll pass it back on to Stephen.
Thanks very much for those very inspiring words. Like all of us, our mothers and grandparents have played an incredible role. My mother, especially in my life, she was a dominant figure. Maybe you call me a mama's boy, which is fine with me. But she had incredible resilience in her life. She was, as she got older, she never saw something she couldn't do. When she was in her 90s, she learned how to operate a computer, which I still don't know how to do. She was better than I was. I mean, she just always wanted to learn and to continue. She loved bridge. She loved life to the fullest, and she was a very special person. And so, like all of our mothers and close family members mean so much to us. And I think to a certain extent, they're our inspiration for what we would like to be. We'd like to see it in our own lives as we move forward and begin in those, I guess, those final few years. But throughout her life, she taught me a great deal. And one important thing was that to be open-minded, to always listen, to understand, and to realize that you're just an individual like everybody else, and just to be friendly and treat everybody with respect. And that's what she did. She was a remarkable woman. And I would tell you some cute stories about her, but most of them have bad language. And so I can't do that on this particular venue. Might not be very well. But one of the things that I learned most about seniors was when I was running for council the first time. I'll never forget this story. I'm knocking on doors. I come to this door, and so this lady says to me, starts talking. She says, "You're going to go to the ESSO meeting." So, when am I going to go to the ESSO meeting? It's the gas station. How many meetings can they have at ESSO at the gas station? But I played stupid, like most politicians should. And I listened to what she had to say. And I found out that this was the seniors organization for the West End of Edmonton. And so over the next few years, I became very close with the organization, and I learned an incredible amount. They were a remarkable group of people that started with an organization, and really all of it was done with one executive director, but it was the volunteerism of the people. I got to see their resilience, their desire to make life better for everyone, to reach out to become friends with, and to build an institution that would last for so many years. And today it's grown into memberships of well over, I think probably over 2,000-3,000 members, maybe even more than that. And that taught me how important it was that within our communities that we understand how we can make life more interesting and more enjoyable for seniors. Because if we want to keep people in their homes longer, we have to have facilities and services for them they're going to enjoy. Not something that we're going to give them out of charity, but something they can enjoy, they can go to, that can be challenging. And what I found from the various seniors organizations in Edmonton, which was quite remarkable, and I got to meet all of them and got to participate in all of them, they're a great group of people that are passionate about not just their community, but the city, and passionate about growing older in a very respectful way. And I think that we don't give enough credit to the contributions of these people to the seniors organizations and cities across the country. And as a city, I'm very proud of the involvement that we had when I was mayor to work with each of these groups to help build their communities in a stronger way. So I guess it's that entire group of seniors that have been so active in the seniors community in Edmonton through various organizations. And then my very, very, very most special person in the world, someone who I love dearly, my mother, who really taught me more lessons than one can imagine. And even till today, I miss her greatly and think about some of the things she had to say, and the jokes she would tell. And I'll tell one quick one. She used to go to Florida in the wintertime. And so she tells this joke with this man and this woman. He's sitting on a bench. A woman walks up to him, sits down beside him. She says, "I haven't seen you here before." He says, "Oh, so," he says, "I've been away." "Oh," she said, "Where have you been?" He said, "I've been in jail." He said, "Oh, why were you in jail?" "I killed my wife." "Oh, so you're single." So that was my mother's jokes. So she's very, very, she would tell them, I'm not a good joke teller. She was marvelous. So I'll pass it on to you, Adrian.
Thanks. I suspect I might violate the rules of no vernacular, but when I was young, my dad died when I was quite young, and I suppose the person that has been a major role model to me was the father of a school friend who is almost like a surrogate dad, and he retired at age 55. And he said, "Retired." I remember him saying, "That's like a nothing, isn't it? People ask you what you do. You say you're retired. It's like you've given up." "Well, bugger them, Adrian," he said. "I am not giving up." '60, he taught me how to fly fish better. He took on an active retirement. I was a beekeeper from age 14 and still do keep bees. And he took up beekeeping with alacrity. He rapidly became better than me. He had 50 hives. And, and the things we've heard about maintaining physical health, but maintaining our mental health and well-being is clearly important, and retaining a sense of purpose. We see, and particularly men, I think, are often defined by what they do, and that's who they are. And retirement is a huge challenge. And to me, I've very much taken the idea that maintaining a sense of purpose in late life is extremely important, to take the time to rediscover things that you might have given up because of the hurly-burly and the slings of arrows of things that have happened in earlier life. It's an ideal opportunity, but not to suddenly think, okay, tomorrow I'm not going to work, what am I going to do? I think, well, actually, I need to have a plan. We heard from Karen, exactly that. I'm doing this already. I'm doing this already. This is my plan. So that's extremely important. Retirement isn't really a time for leisure, or shouldn't be. Half of us in later life will have what we call healthy, successful aging. But again, as Karen and Stephen said, some of the people, we have things with which we need to deal, which may be a healthcare burden. So we owe it to ourselves to become as educated and as health literate as we can be, so we can advocate for ourselves and not be subjected to passive ageism, because seniors are often lumped together as this amorphous mass of people who are over 65. And I would put it to everybody here that actually that's probably wrong. It's a Bismarckian definition of when people used to peg it 3 years later. And now we've got 25 plus years of over 65 to live to our best ability. I do a lot of health literacy and education and community engagement lectures, and I often incite rebellion in community of living, where we should be advocating. We should advocate for ourselves. We should have residence councils who have an impact on the institution. So don't put up with stuff, folks, would be my key. And be active out there, be a political force.
Again, brilliant. Let me pull together some of what I heard you say. I think when we think about who shapes us, who's influential, and what it is about them that's making people influential, it has to do with the term, and Stephen identified it, resilience, but you've all talked about it, resilience. And when people face challenges, because life is full of challenges, what inspires us is how people respond to those challenges and the resilience that we see. And that the fact that all of you talked about that suggests that, contrary to the stereotypes what we have about aging, resilience is the norm, right? Resilience is what we do. So that's one of the themes, resilience, and that it is the norm. It's what inspires us, and it is what we notice, and that it seems to be what it is about people that we see as strength. The other theme that I saw, not exclusively, but the people who influence us are women. Interesting, because depends on the domain, but the most negative stereotypes that we have, and the stereotypes associated with the kind of the least power, are associated with older women, right? More so than men, but it depends on the stereotype, but generally women. Yet when asked who influences you, women. Just an interesting observation, interesting thing to think about. And the other theme that I think I picked up from all of you is that in aging, even though we associate less power with growing older, all of you talked about power, that older people can be change makers, that older people, through keeping active and in their activity, can be forces for change, not only in their own lives, but in society. So aging, you're associating with power and change making, and the kinds of things that it's not that, yes, as Adrian just said, this retirement isn't a time of inactivity. It is a time of activity, or it can be a time of activity. So resilience as a theme, women as powerful is another theme, and older people as change makers and power and activity, another theme. So thank you for that. More thoughts for us to take away and to think about. And I think under this category as well, the other take home that I have, and we've heard it so many times in the previous panel, in this panel, and we hear it in casual conversation, that when we think about the people who are important in our lives, so often we say, I wish I would have asked. I wish I could talk to mom or dad. I wish, and I say that and think that virtually every day when something happens. So maybe a take home from today is a little less wishing. And if you have the opportunity, some of us have lost the opportunity, for that person that influences you in your life. There's something you want to say, something that you want to know about them, something you want to record about their life. Today's the day to ask it. Maybe that's the way we ought to think about it. Today, I was at a panel discussion, and I know my action or to-do item after is to have that conversation with someone so that I'm not left wishing afterwards. Okay, thank you. Third question. Stereotyping, as I said, is ageism is stereotyping and discrimination of people based on age. So now I'm going to ask each of you, have you experienced ageism? And if so, what was that experience? Like, in what ways did you think it was ageism, and how did it make you feel? Now, not everyone says that they experience ageism. So if you think that you haven't experienced ageism yourself, have you seen it in play? Have you seen it happening to others? And what did you feel about kind of observing that situation? So ageism proper, let's talk about that and your experiences of that. Stephen, why don't you launch us on this topic?
There we go. Your comments about asking people, I regret constantly that I didn't ask my mother and father questions about where they came from, what their birth, what the history of, but I didn't. And so now there's no one around to ask. So you're so correct. We should find out a bit more. Ageism, I bet it had a little experience with this. I don't know if anybody knew, nobody. I ran for the leader of I was the leader of the Alberta Party, and I ran to be premier a few years ago. And, but what was interesting is during the process of making the decision to run or not run, I had all kinds of friends of mine saying, you're too old, you shouldn't do this, that it's something that a younger person should do. People are going to question your capacity, question your ability, et cetera, because of your age. And, you know, as well, I said, well, I think I'm capable and I'll try. But on the other side of the coin, what I found was that the younger people who were involved, and most of the people involved in my campaign, were under the age of 35. They never questioned it. They didn't look at me as being older. They looked at me as being a person. And as long as we related to one another on the same level, I wasn't this grandfather looking down upon them, passing judgment what they do or what they didn't do. We were partners. We were working together. There wasn't a question about it. But I constantly heard from friends of mine who were my age and a little younger, a little older, questioning why we should do things. And I think oftentimes seniors maybe pigeonhole themselves a bit too much, put ourselves in a corner. Maybe we should just be involved in this seniors organization or that seniors organization, rather than being involved in a more mainstream activity. Who says you have to retire at 60 or 65? I'm still working, and I'm older than 60 or 65. I'll tell you that. And I don't plan to quit working until someday when they dig a hole and put me in it. But the fact is, we should never limit our limit our capacity, nor allow people, whoever they happen to be, to tell us we should or shouldn't be able to do something. If we believe we can do it, we should go ahead and do it. And so I've always believed in my life that, you know, I'm a terrible tennis player, but I love playing tennis. No one's going to tell me I should quit playing tennis. I'm not going to get any better, but I still think I'm going to compete in Wimbledon seniors, not successfully. So I think that's a big part of it. The other one I saw, which was very disturbing, is elder abuse. I think that's something that in our society today is very scary. You get people who are elderly people who have a house and they live alone and their kids are taking advantage of them. I think that's something that we need to really spend a lot of time on. And I really believe that it's a real problem within our society today. It's not near enough paid attention to. It's hard to get into those houses, and it's hard for someone to call up and to complain. But elder abuse is something that is really, really rampant, I think, today. And people, because younger people have their parents have a house, the house is worth $300,000 or $400,000, and they want to see that house. They want to get their parents then into a home so they can sell the house and they can garner the money. So I think we really have to, as a society, really watch out for that, and the professionals that are involved in overseeing what's happening in the world of seniors, as well as seniors organizations like our coordinating council. That has to be a priority, and we need to make sure the police don't forget this. It's a very scary thing for a senior who's not strong, who's not well, to be manipulated by their children. So senior abuse and ageism I think are a very scary thing. And in my case, seniors saying you can't do things because you're too old. Never limit your boundaries. And I will turn it over. I think it goes to Karen next.
Thanks, Stephen.
I don't want to make the wrong choice.
I think there are a lot of hidden isms out there still. But I think ageism and sizeism are two completely accepted, publicly accepted isms that exist. Ageism for me is intertwined with sexism. Women in particular, I think, seem to lose our value as we age. I, for one, have already become invisible in many instances. And I think my voice counts less in meetings and things like that, where I'm, where I'm still working. I have to push much harder to be taken seriously, I think. I think maybe it's partially because as we've been objectified in society. So as objects, as we lose our value, then we become of less value. I'm not sure. I went on Twitter trying to stay current. I work with students in my job. So I thought, okay, I'll learn Twitter. And it was really interesting and full of educational connections that were wonderful, but it was also a bit of a cesspool. As a Karen, I was dismissed at times when I had the courage to put up my voice because I was a Karen. And I find it really sad that in this day and age, it's still a middle-aged female's name that has been appropriated to become a derogatory term. I don't find it funny at all. I find it depressing. And on Twitter, I also noticed there was a lot of talk and anger about boomers and blaming them for everything. There was insulting comments or hints at comments suggesting elderly people voted one way or were dumb and slow, things like that. Maybe not as up on technology, but that's not dumb. I'm working currently, so I have to continually learn new technology. But I guarantee you 10 years past retirement, I'm not going to be keeping on top of all of that. It's not that person is dumb. It's that person isn't utilizing that tool. It's just as wrong for young people to be dismissed. I think all our voices together are really crucial. Children's voices. I have a grandchild too. He's really young yet. He's not even 2, but his voice counts. Teens, young adults, middle-aged adults, seniors. We need all of us. I need to remember some things that I've forgotten. I need to remember that perspective of crouching down and what things looked like. And there's something that I have to offer. And there's still so much for me to learn from from my mother who has dementia. I'm still learning from her daily. And another thing I noticed during COVID was the fairly frequent comments about, well, it's only 60, 70, 80-year-olds that have to worry. That I found awful. It was horrific. I thought, well, we're all still contributing and helping our families and volunteering and working and creating new things. And why is it that these lives and anybody with comorbidities don't matter? I don't know if that's purely ageism or if that's partly this fear. And so people want to be able to say, well, that's us and them. So I'm safe because I'm not there. I'm not sure what the reasons are, but I found that bad. And personally too, even medically, sometimes you'll be dismissed. Well, this is part of aging, Karen. It's like, well, is it? Is it? Do I have to have this because I'm 60? Like, no, I don't think so. Let's find a solution. And I'm guilty of ageism too. I've always utilized self-deprecating humor. And so I'll sometimes say something, and I have, listening to my fellow speakers here, I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to be really conscious of changing that. So thanks so much. Back to you, Cherie.
Adrian, let's hear what you've got to say before I chime in.
Well, I think, although I don't think that I've been subject to ageism personally, it's something I see more or less every day in my professional practice. And I would say, I think, as Karen says, that often we see internal ageism, that acceptance of something which is clearly abnormal just because I'm getting older, and therefore I have to put up with it. It may surprise you to know that 1 in 4 older women think that it's normal to wet yourself just because you're old, and that is something you need to put up with. And I see that time and time again. And clearly that's not true. But on the other side of the coin, many healthcare practitioners also think it should be normal to wet yourself as you get older. So we have this internal, it's just because I'm old thing, but also I work in a profession that's come out of a benign paternalism through to now, I think, an active healthcare partnership. But we see that older people, the health literacy of older people is not that perhaps which it should be. And that may be because of a generational and then a cohort effect. The doctor knows best. You live through severe times, particularly in the war, and we should be thankful. And we need to change that. If we're going to have, yeah, if we're going to be empowered and empower ourselves as we're older to manage our other healthcare conditions, so we can manage them the best we can, we know that empowerment improves our autonomy, improves our quality of life. So not accepting malign paternalism is important, and not adhering to social expectations is important. That I think Karen said, I don't care what they think of it anymore. Let's just say it. And we often are maligned for that as, oh no, boomer, or oh, you're being a Karen, being stereotyped and lumped together as much as we might lump together annoying teenagers or people on Twitter. So I think I spend a lot of time advocating for older people, but judiciously applying expert opinion to say, well, actually, there is value in this, or you should be as fully informed. So I think we owe it to ourselves to be as fully informed as we can, not only about health, but our social well-being, to allow us to take decent decisions to make sure we do have an empowered, maximized, optimal quality of life. And if we want to go on working until we're 95, if we're capable and productive, there's no reason why we shouldn't.
So excellent examples in this discussion that we've had around this question that shows that ageism exists. People experience it in how people are treated, but also in how people take in those stereotypes and how it matters for health and well-being. So no question that based on the discussion here, we're seeing that, yeah, ageism, it's around and it's mattering. Another theme, Karen brought this up, that we talked about a little bit in the last question. There's the age variable, and then there's also other isms on top of it. And in the literature, that's talked about in terms of intersectionality now. It used to be talked about as double jeopardy, triple jeopardy. So yes, not only are we older, but we've got other labels that kind of all group together that can make life somewhat challenging. But as Adrian said, we're fighting against it, and we need to advocate to fight against it. Now, the other thing that this discussion spurred, first time I've ever thought about this in my life, and I think it might be a good exam question for students, but it's something that Stephen said. He said, when people say that you are too old, there are challenges as we grow older and reasons that we may not do something as we're older, but usually it's not because of our age. It's because of some kind of a limiting health condition or some other condition that might be age related that makes it such that we can't do something anymore. But on top of that, not only that, there's compensation, there's that resilience, there's loss regulation, there's also gains. So it's very rare that because of our age that we're too old to do something. I think it is absolutely possible and absolutely true that in life, we can be too young to do something. I think kids can't drive, for example, or shouldn't drive. There are some things that they shouldn't do. But once we become adults, we may grow older as adults, but I would challenge us to think about anything that we cannot do because we're too old. I can't think of anything. I think there are things that might be more challenging or we're limited, but we can compensate. We probably find some other way to meet the same goal. We may have things that limit our ability to do it, but it's not because of our age. So that's what I challenge you to think about today. Is there anything that you can think about that you shouldn't do when you're older because you are too old? Let me know what that is, because I can't think of it. So we're having a great conversation. Let's end on a positive note with our last question. So it is our collective goal to develop a positive and constructive view of aging. Do you have one example of a book or a film or a work of art or anything else that inspires you personally about the late life human experience? So a book, a film, a work of art, something that inspires you personally about the late life experience. So maybe someone's going to get a good tip here, or get a recommendation for something that they might want to take away from your answer today. So let's begin with Adrian.
Okay, well, thank you. I have a single example, and I think it probably goes along with my non-conformist attitudes of aging and what the hell. It's the 100-year-old man who jumped out of the window and disappeared by Jonas Jonasson. Which is about a guy in a nursing home who just packs his bag, takes off, and about all the scrapes that he gets into, and and how he defies all of the expectations of how a 100-year-old man should behave. It's a great read. It's not that particularly long book. It's translated obviously from the Swedish. I believe it's also a film, not that I've seen it. But it just says, don't accept the boundaries that other people force upon you because you are old. Don't behave in the way that you think you should do because of social expectations. I was giving a talk on sex in later life to a group of people in a congregate living the other day. Don't behave just because you think you should do, because it's how your mother would have behaved. Life's different. Fulfill your own life. Short answer. That's all, I'm afraid. Stephen.
Thanks, Adrian. I'm going to not necessarily do a book or anything like I've read, but an event. Several years ago, and I don't like to reflect back when I was mayor, but when I was mayor, we had a very, very active seniors group, and they developed this Creative Age Festival. And I'm not sure it still is going on today, but it went on for a few years. And it was remarkable of the involvement with which people got engaged in various forms of arts. And it was quite remarkable to see the resilience of people who wanted to act, who wanted to sing, who wanted to dance, and how much work they put into this in order to really, for their enjoyment, not for the public's enjoyment, but for their own enjoyment. And it really was something I really enjoyed to watch an awful lot. I'm not a very talented person, so I don't sing, I don't dance, I try to tell jokes, but not very good at it. But I was quite amazed at how this group of people who really had, I don't think, that much tying them together other than they want to be part of this Creative Age Festival, started it, and they made it into something very special. So I think it really taught me a lesson that art is not just limited to individuals or to age groups, but it's all those people who want to enjoy and appreciate the finer parts of life. And I think that's a big part of our life, and it is a big part of all of our existence is to enjoy arts and culture. And for those who are able to, or those who have the courage to get up on a stage or in Karen's case, to draw or paint, which is something I tremendously admire. It was really wonderful to see. And those people really enjoyed themselves. And that was a really wonderful experience. My book readings tends to stay to murder mysteries with no brains involved whatsoever. So one of these days I'm going to read a book that you need to think about, but right now I'm in the non-thinking era. So I think there's a real lesson to be learned how seniors, and I don't mean just seniors, but people can really engage themselves in the arts in a variety of ways. And so on that note, Karen, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Stephen. And Adrian, it's a pleasure to listen to you guys talk. I have a hard time pointing out a book or a movie. I do not remember names of people, books, movies, gone. Never have, never will, I suspect. But if I had to point out a show, it would be Grace and Frankie. I love the way these older people are portrayed as fully human, sexual beings with a lot on the go. I really enjoy the show. And I think other than that, my biggest inspiration would be a compilation of musicians, because I am a musician as well. So when I think of Leonard Cohen, Johnny Cash had some of his best albums towards the end of his life, I think. Mavis Staples, Doc Watson, there's just countless names. I think of all the people at the Fiddler's Roost. There was a lot of older people there, and they'd get up on stage and we'd sing and dance and play music together. Connecting with sound. I think of my Uncle Henry. He started playing the fiddle seriously later in life, and he's 90 now, and he's still entertaining people with his fiddle. I think of my husband. He's 12 years older than I am, and he's been retired for a while. He's still learning. He's improving his finger picking all the time. Every day he practices. He's teaching himself the mandolin. He's learning to build furniture that's just amazingly beautiful. He took up archery 2 years ago. Now he's winning awards at it. And he took up leather crafting to support the archery so he could make himself this beautiful quiver and arm protector. I think of creators, and that's art, music, writers, that's business people who are creating new business entities that serve the community. It takes years to build up some of these skills. And if we don't start when we're young in life, there's still hope. We still have the time to develop these things. And if we did start on these younger in life, well, then there's a chance to innovate and experiment, because we're relieved of some of the drudgery or the more mundane things that we're involved in taking care of earlier life. So yeah, it's a fantastic opportunity, and I can't wait to read that book, The 100-Year-Old Man. Thanks so much. Over to you, Cherie.
Wow. So I'm going to have to turn it back over to Sheila, but before I do that, I just want to ask it, because we've got so many good examples here. One of my favorite movies is Disney Pixar Up, where the older man loses his wife and he goes on an incredible journey that they had always planned. I love that movie. And I remember when my son was very young, I took him to that because I wanted him to see that view of aging. But I'm wondering if I don't know if we can see it, if it will come up, but maybe the organizers can see it in the back. If others who are listening have examples of things that are inspiring, books, films, can they put that in the chat, and maybe the organizers can read us off a couple, one or two. Is that there anywhere? Can you see it? Tim, Carolyn? Yes, yep. We can, Carolyn says. So everyone who's listening, if you want to give an example of something inspiring, a really great example of aging, just put it in the chat and we'll read out a couple. Did you get anything, Tim? Carolyn?
Haven't got anything yet. One film that I just saw, my wife and I just saw a few days ago, was Helen Mirren and The Good Liar. Excellent film, very funny, and quite a moving film. We have Millie Alone, Stuart Onan, and the Mole Agent movie. Good Liar, what I just mentioned. The Intern, oh yes. Yes, that was a wonderful film and well worth seeing. Guy wasn't ready to hang up his work shoes. From Dr. Alpern, we have Life is Inspiring. Every day is a chance for new learning.
Super. Okay. So let me summarize then. So I think what we've learned from today, and we've seen it in the discussion, ageism exists and ageism matters. We've seen that. And what are we going to do about it? Well, we are now going to be more aware. We're going to look for it. And we're going to hope and have those balanced conversations about our experiences to increase our awareness. We're going to do that. We're going to talk with others. And then on the practical side, we've all agreed that if we have a burning question that we want to ask someone today, we're going to do it today. We're going to write it down. We're going to not have that regret of not asking. And then all of us in the quiet moment today, we're going to ask ourselves, what is there that I can think of that I won't be able to do because I am too old? And that I think will probably go quickly for you because I'm not sure there's much, but give it a try. See if you can think of something that you will not be able to do because you are too old, because of your age. Might be because of some other reasons, but I challenge you to ask, is it because of your age? Okay, so wonderful learnings today. I thank profusely our panelists who shared their experiences, shared their insights. It was wonderful to hear from you and to learn from you today. Thank you so much for your time. And I will turn it over to close off the session back to Sheila.
Oh, thank you very much, everyone. Well, first of all, Karen, I'd love to learn to knit. I'm a senior, but I'm left-handed, so I don't know if that's ever going to be a possibility. And Stephen, thank you so much for the many times you come out to CISA, the time you tried to catch the owl in the tree, and Adrian for all your lovely sessions on health below the belt. And also, Adrian introduced a program to CISA where the medical students came one day to see healthy seniors. We just thank you all. We thank you, Cherie Kwong-Si, for always moderating, wonderful moderator. We thank you, the audience, and we thank the committee that organized this event.